while you have this heated exchange that's happening in parliament, and naturally we are a noisy, vibrant democracy, so you have the government and the opposition who are battling it out in parliament. What is the United States doing? The United States has quietly revised key words, key language in the trade deal fact sheet that it had put out, and this trade deal with India. This move is being perceived either as further relaxation by the White House or with facts finally being put in black and white. We'll decode this, but let's try and understand what was said earlier in the fact sheet and what is being said now. First, on agriculture, and remember, this is politically a very sensitive issue in India. Earlier, the US fact sheet spoke of tariff cut on US goods, including certain pulses. But the updated version that has quietly been put out, it just drops any reference to pulses altogether. Now, are these facts that are being put out? Or is this a quiet rollback because India stood firm? Remember what Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal said? There is no question of any compromise on the interests of farmers. He insisted that repeatedly, especially in that interview to India Today's Raj Chingappa. He made that very clear. Second, on that big ticket purchase promise. Now, everyone said American President Donald Trump wants that big headline. So where President Trump has spoken of, or the fact sheet spoke of, a commitment to buy $500 billion worth of American goods, now that wording has been altered or changed to indicate that India intends to make those purchases. Now, from a commitment to an intention. Does that appear that this is a softening of stance and assurance, but not a commitment? Finally, on digital trade and taxation, the earlier document had suggested India would scrap its digital service tax and move towards fair bilateral rules with duty-free electronic transmissions. The revised text actually stops short of saying that. It says that India has committed to a negotiation, to negotiate a trade deal rule with no mention of removing the digital tax. Taken together, does this edit of the fact sheet indicate that there is diplomacy that's happening constantly? Was there a loss in transmission, or are facts finally being written when India stands firm? Let me bring into this conversation Siddharth Zarabi once again. Let me also bring into this conversation Mr. S.C. Garg. He's former Finance and Economic Affairs Secretary of Government of India and an author. Siddharth, let's start with the $500 billion worth of purchase of American goods. There is now clarity that there is no legally binding commitment, but perhaps a statement of intent.
Gaurav, in fact, the framework agreement, because remember, it is still not a full-fledged either an interim agreement or a bilateral trade treaty. That entire agreement so far is non-binding. It is an announcement. It does not have the kind of statutory authority that the other deal, for example, the European Union deal has. Let me also point out that the fine print is being discussed on both sides. And in fact, the third element of the digital services tax that you mentioned was a clear mistake on the behalf of the United States, because that was abolished in April of 2025. Before that, 2 years ago, the e-commerce equalization levy had been taken off. So this fine print business will continue till there is an actual signature. And remember, we have put December timeline to a full-fledged framework deal. If it took 20 years plus for the European Union deal, it's taken 6 months at least to reach at this stage. Now, why is this intent versus commitment very, very important? Because commitment would definitely cause problems. It would be unprecedented. And it would mean that the government of India as the state would end up directing private entities to do something or not do something. Remember, so far, minus the public sector oil companies, in the case of Russian oil, There is no direction, there is no import license that the government of India gives. But yes, the government is involved on account of energy security, overall
Maybe
national
a
concerns.
nudge and a push in that direction. But Mr. Garg, your reading of this clarification of the fact sheet. Let's for the moment talk about this $500 billion worth of purchases from the US, an intent, not a commitment. How do you read this?
See, what the fact sheet changes mean is only that it has been brought in line with the interim framework agreement. It's nothing more than that. The words used in the framework agreement were additional goods, additional products, whereas the fact sheet said pulses or the lentils. Now this has been removed because there is no specific agreement in the in the interim framework agreement about that. So it brings it in line with that. But remember, the 7% reduction from 25% to 18% is contingent on signing the trade deal. Until that happens, the tariff India is subject to, it doesn't reduce to 18%. So you can't delay it endlessly. If you delay it, then you are not getting the benefit of the reduction. And
Okay.
therefore, the deal would happen faster, sooner, and at that time, all these sort of gray areas of additional products, and there is another mention in the interim agreement that India would address the non-tariff issues. So those non-tariff issues would also need to be addressed. And
Okay.
those are now my assessment is that if we are making too much of this issue about the commitment versus intent or the pulses being mentioned in the fact sheet and it has to be removed, there is a danger that this trade deal may not happen then. And if
Okay.
it doesn't happen, then your 25% to 18% is gone.
Fair enough. Siddharth Zarabi, on the specific issue of pulses and the agriculture, or if I may, sensitive sectors, what exactly has India agreed to, agreed to open what in agriculture and what remains strictly off limits? We've heard Piyush Goyal, you've been to the backgrounder briefing. Are India and the US now either on the same page or coming on the same page, or does ambiguity remain?
Gaurav, at the macro level, we have moved ahead of where we were in the past. So that is an acknowledged fact. But is there a whole scale opening up? Have sensitive core food security items been opened up? Absolutely not. Like Mr. Garg pointed out, the final legal agreement, and he has experience of negotiating these things.
Yes,
Every comma and the full stop is argued about. We will
of
wait
course.
for that. But as of now, none of that has happened. Wherever there is some relaxation, one quick line, Gaurav, there are either quota limits, that means you can't send into India more than X quantity, or there is a minimum import price. So there are safeguards even where there is some opening up. And remember,
Okay.
if we have given to the EU certain relaxations, how could you conceivably not offer them to the United States? We are now standing at 9 trade agreements being finalized,
Yes.
some of which are in the process of being signed up. It is an unprecedented time after a few years of hiatus on this. India is opening up, and in that process, there might be some back and forth,
Okay.
but that's very clear, Gaurav.
So in a trade deal, there's give and take. It can't just be all give. It can't just be all take. Mr. Garg, you agree with Siddharth. You have a big smile on your face. And in your view, sir, have farmer interests been protected in case US agri imports were to scale up, and those checks and balances, how much scaling up can happen? Is all of that factored in or being factored in?
Exactly. The all trade deals are about give and take, about what I give, what I take from you. This is the way it operates. Agriculture has been our sort of sensitive subject. We have been saying that we have not been doing this deal because we have concerns, red lines on agriculture products. Now, the interim agreement which has been done does not say specifically except that soybean oil has been mentioned, some DDG and couple of other products have been
Yeah.
mentioned on which there is a specific mention, but there is no specific mention about dairy. There is no specific mention about whether soybean includes the GM oil or not. There is no such agreements about specificities. There is, as I said earlier, there is a word used, additional products. Now on additional products which are to be included. So there are three very clear takeaways from that. Number one, at this stage, except two or three, no specific agriculture product has been agreed to be opened for access at
Okay.
zero duty. But at the same time, the second thing, that no specific product of agriculture has been specifically excluded. That this will not find mention in the final agreement. Not a single product has been mentioned that this will not be agreed to. We don't know. And
Though
finally,
Commerce Minister in his interview to India Today did mention certain dals
no,
and oil, certain other things that will
no,
not
no,
be
no.
imported.
Commerce Minister may say that is what they would like. But whether they have agreed, Americans have agreed to exclude this is not mentioned either in the agreement right now or in
Okay.
the fact sheet. It's in the business of negotiation. Let's take this lentil issue. You would
Yes.
remember that American farmers said that we have to sell the lentils. And
Yes.
after the deal was interim agreement was signed, the same people congratulated Trump, saying that you have protected our interests, which meant that possibly India has agreed to take the pulses lentils from United States.
So
By
I
the way,
think Dakota was one of those states, two states, Siddharth.
correct, correct.
Your reading,
By the
Siddharth,
way, we
yes,
are
Gaurav,
sir.
we are
Gaurav, a
we
global
are
trade
deficit in
Gaurav, global
pulses.
trade is
We
a
import.
very interesting subject. You have covered the Ukraine war. You perhaps went half a dozen times. Do you know who was the largest exporter of sunflower seeds, for
Ye-
example,
Yes.
to India? It was Ukraine, billion
Ukraine.
dollar plus
Correct.
prior to
So
the
you never.
conflict.
So
Who has exported lentils to us? Ukraine,
And we
Myanmar.
are
So
deficit,
you know,
yes.
we are deficit.
global
So
trade is a very non-political subject, and yes, economic interests are important, but unfortunately if it is seen through a political prism, you will not be able to buy or sell anything.
So this is
Point.
precisely when we should not be spending too much political capital on getting a sort of fact sheet amended. We might actually need pulses. So,
Yes.
and this might become a flashpoint. So I think the two things I said, what is not there. The final thing is that there is a lot of gray areas to be negotiated.
So let me just get
One
Siddharth to
thing,
quickly respond on that very important aspect that you raised, Mr. Garg, on additional items. Does that introduce ambiguity, Siddharth? And in your view, is this the beginning of a broader agri-liberalization? Or Siddharth, is this tightly ring fencing what we need to protect? So whatever concessions we are giving need to be given, but core issues are being ring fenced. How do you read that?
Gaurav, hand on heart, 20 years or 10 years ago or 15 years ago, did you consume avocado, which was homegrown or imported? Did I consume blueberries? Consumer tastes are changing in India. If there is a certain set of consumers that wants a certain agriculture product which is not available, apples, for example, my home state, my birth place of Jammu and Kashmir, there are pretty nice apples that get imported as long as there are quantity restrictions, there are price
Okay.
restrictions. What you don't want is a domestic producer to get wiped out. But should there be some amount of competition? Why not? Our agriculture, when we demand, our farmers demand that हमारा सामान हमारा पैदावार बाकी देशों में जाना चाहिए, then why not give and take?
Okay. There's
That's why it's very
such a
important, Gaurav, for
go
the
on, sir.
political people not to get locked into or indefensible positions. Unfortunately, Indian trade negotiators in this deal for last 10 months have locked them up into such a indefensible position. Why we have been saying that agriculture will protect, will not open up, And now you are going to open and provide all the arguments why it is necessary to open up. That's why.
No, but what needs to be opened up should be opened up. What doesn't need
Correct.
to be opened up should not be opened up. But that's
That
a
is
debate,
the
and that is why
that
on
is
India
the
Today.
attitude. That is the
Yes.
attitude we should
Gaurav, the
take.
ASEAN deal, Gaurav, the
Yes.
ASEAN deal has caused permanent damage to Indian manufacturing industry for years upon years. Mr. Garg knows this. That was negotiated. Why did we join the WTO 7 years, 6 years before China? What was the hurry? Shouldn't we have built up our own economic
No,
resilience and
Siddharth,
Swadeshi and domestic capacities? This argument can go on for years. Let's not bring, I agree with Mr. Garg, let's not bring politics of any kind into this. But there
But
are
we are
people who
such a
say that we
political
joined the
nation,
WTO
politics
far ahead
will
of
come
time.
in. And that is what makes it so interesting that in a vibrant democracy, everything's discussed and discussed threadbare and on India Today with experts so that our viewers know what's actually good keeping India first. I'm sorry I've run out of time on this part.
One sentence.
Go on,
See,
sir.
the accusation that somebody is sailing out India actually should be viewed that can you sail Indian product out rather than say, change the political narrative to the
That's such a
commercial
sweet way of
narrative.
looking at
Sail
it.
Indian
Let's
products.
sell made in India products overseas even more. Great talking to you, gentlemen, and hopefully we'll have you back because this is one issue which will continue to excite minds across the country. India Today reports from ground zero in Tehran as Iran marks the anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. This is the 47th anniversary, and India Today is on the streets of Tehran, the only Indian channel to be reporting from there. Now, there are slogans, the Shah is gone. In 1979, Iranian newspapers carried this front page headline when Mohammad Reza Shah left the country. Today, there are protests both in favor and against the current regime. Sumit Chaudhary with this report.
Right now we are at the Azadi Square. Right behind me you can see the Azadi Square where the massive deployment, massive masses happened there. The people have come on the solidarity of National Day of Iran. Every year on 11th of February, every year they celebrate their National Day. This is 47th National Day of Iran, and it also 47 years of when the Iranian Revolution has completed. You can see right behind me, their masses have been coming on a large scale, especially you can see a heavy deployment of the IRGC, their other forces, their paramilitary forces, their policing and the intelligence forces have been gathered. And why this is National Day is important, because this National Day comes just after a few days when we have seen videos from all across Iran, how the riots have happened, how the people, we have seen also how exactly things have been happening. But now it's basically a showing of strength by the Iranian authorities as well. They are coming on the street not only to celebrate their National Day, but also a loud and clear message to, especially to the US, that they don't want a regime change. Although there are many perspectives about all these regime change, but what is the ground reality we are showing to you? India Today group is only group is present in Tehran when the tension has been coming to that particular level, when a new war front is emerging on the world map, and we have been bringing you all the clear pictures from the ground zero.
And let me quickly cut across to Tehran and bring in Sumit Chaudhary for more. So Sumit, as we look at these images of celebrations in Tehran, is Iran actually bracing for the outcome of this conversation that will take place just in a short while from now between Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump? Apparently, Israel says either Israel and US go together or Israel will go it alone and target Iran.
Definitely, there is a very close eye, there is a very close surveillance on what exactly going to happen between the Netanyahu and the US President meeting. But one thing is very clear for Iranians, so that they know that Israel doesn't want any peace between the US and the Israel, with Iran, and that is why the PM with Israel is going to see President Donald Trump, and he will take a part in the all of the but of course he will be pushing the American legislation not to negotiate on the ballistic missile program. But for Iran, it's a matter of survival effort. Iran has clearly mentioned the point that they are going to call out the nuclear program, but they are not going to discuss or talk regarding their ballistic program, because if they this happened, but if this happened, then if many years or the many years their issue
Okay.
will not be called, and that is why they did very clearly mentioned by the Iranian side that they are not going to negotiate, they are not going to talk regarding their ballistic missile program.
Keep tracking that story. I will come back to you for more. Stay safe. Sumit, for the moment, many thanks for joining me. I have to slip into a quick break here. But before I take a break, finally, confessions of Pakistan. Pakistan's Defense Minister Khawaja Asif, on the floor of the House, in Pakistan's National Assembly, he said America has treated them worse than toilet paper, used, abused, and discarded Pakistan. And they continue to do that. Asif was actually reflecting on the post-1999 realignment with Washington, D.C., especially after the attack on the World Trade Center in 2001, the war that followed, where Pakistan was warned, you either join that or be bombed to Stone Age.